Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Moment of silence today is for Jimmy Carter, who is on.
Press the button back.
For our past president, Jimmy Carter, who's on hospice and failing. So our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. A moment of silence. Thank you. Ms. Anderson is going to talk to us a little bit about the gala that's coming up.
All right, well, we want to congratulate Nikki Freed, who was elected as chair of the Florida Democratic Party. She's got great plans for the future. And I'm so excited to tell you that she will be at the gala that we are having on March 26th, 2 weeks from tomorrow at the Brownwood Hotel. So we're really excited because we can hear from her plans for going forward. Also, we will have live music by Joe Hand, who plays every Wednesday at Edna's, as well as other places around the villages. So we will have live music. It's a sit-down dinner. It's going to be a great evening for Democrats to come together. So up at the table here, we have little cards where it has how to get tickets. But you can also see me at the end of the meeting if you have a credit card and want to get a ticket today. We have, as part of the silent auction, we have 4 trips. They are trips of 6 or 8 people to go to Turks and Caicos. You might want to go to Hilton Head for a golf event. You might want to go to Italy or south of France and taste some wine and have a wine tour or a dinner cooked in a villa where you're staying. So we have brochures for the trips as well. So start talking to your friends and your family about which trip you all want to take. So there are the trips. Anyway, thank you, and we hope to see all of you next 2 Sundays, 2 weeks from tomorrow at the Brownwood Hotel. Thanks.
Sock Hop's coming up in April. You don't need a pool skirt. It would be fun if you did, but you don't need to get dressed up. Just come and enjoy the music. It's April 21st. Tickets are only $10, and we'd love to have you there. Okay, I got some stuff to tell you here, so hold on. We put a water petition on your seat that would add a constitutional amendment for water quality. We'd appreciate it if you fill that in. We have a member who is a Canadian, and she's going to be on April 30th, March 1st and 2nd, and May 1st and 2nd. She's at the studio with a play called Mothers and Other Wild Women. And if you tell them that you're a member, then you get a discount to go in. And now I'd like to introduce Mike Falk, who's going to take care of the board elections.
Hello, everybody. So taller now. This is cool. First off, I want to thank the nominating committee. Sue Blaylock, Marcia Shearer, Sharon Chodo, Sylvia Vasmer. Sylvia's over here selling t-shirts. Buy one. And Wanda Smith Kearns. And these folks have been working since November to recruit candidates, vet the candidates, and conduct interviews, and then select the nominees for these positions. So I'm going to give them a hand, please. I feel tall. I never get tall. The nominees are for President Diane Foley. I introduced, I did a bio on these last month. So anyway, this is kind of a repeat. Diane's acting president right now. And next slide, please. Sue Dubman does a lot with Florida politics. She's going to be doing VP programs. She's a nominee for that. Next slide, please. The nominee for Vice President of Communications is Dennis Foley. Dennis is a current treasurer. Next slide, please. Vice President of Membership nominee is Verna Bernerski. Verna is our current secretary. Vice President of Technologies, Andy Kleiman. Andy's currently on the board and dealing with technology issues. He's been doing this for a couple of years. He's sitting up front right now. Nominee for treasurer is Leah Strickman. She comes to us from Arizona. Next slide, please. The nominee for parliamentarian is Amy Shaw. Amy's been here since 2022, and she's going to be making sure that we do things in an orderly manner. And then, is Georgia here today? Is she able to make it? Okay. Well, Georgia wasn't on this. Wasn't nominated or wasn't on this list last month. So thanks to her, she's going to be, she's a nominee for secretary. She lives in the village of Hamlock at Fenney. She comes to us from Illinois, where she was in the Department of Corrections for 26 years. She's a member of the Sumter Democrats, and her quote is, "I look forward to continuing to work for a party in the future." So, those are the nominees. Thank you, nominating committee. Okay, now the fun part. Do I have a motion to elect the officers?
I move that we elect the slate of nominees as presented.
Do I have a second? Okay. All in favor? All in favor to pass this motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Congratulations, new officers. Welcome aboard. Thanks for volunteering, and I look forward to working with you over the next time. Thanks again to the nominating committee. Diane?
Thanks, Mike. Every month, we're going to introduce a volunteer who does great work here in the villages. This month is Bob Jansen. Come on up, Bob.
Good morning, Democrats.
Good morning.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mike for his work as past president. I want to ask first, any of you that know someone that's caring for a loved one 24/7 that has dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, raise your hand. So yeah, we have a number of people. I'm team leader for a program at Hope Lutheran Church called My Time for Free Time. It's a community outreach that the church has, and people who participate, both volunteers and people who come to the program, don't need to be members of Hope. Let me tell you a little bit of about the program. As I said, we meet every Thursday from 1 to 4, and it's for people, as I said, who have loved ones that they care for 24/7. And the programs, we have nurses in the program. They welcome them each week, and when they come, we assign them to a volunteer. And as they move from one activity to the other, they have a volunteer with them. They have to go to the restroom. The volunteer goes along to make sure they come back. So we start out by the participants exercising in their chairs, and then they move to an area. They have snacks, they have games, they have crafts, and then the last hour of the day we have live music that comes in. These people, they don't charge us for their music. It's a highlight of the program, and it gives caregivers, as I said, 3 hours a week. That doesn't seem a lot to most of us, does it? But if you're caring for a loved one who has Alzheimer's or dementia, one of these others, it's a huge thing for them. So I would ask if you know of someone who's caring for a loved one, as I indicated, and they need this support, come up and see me after. I'll give you my contact information and ask you to give it to them. We have between 20 to 30 people who are in, and it's sometimes limited by the number of volunteers that we have. So if you're intrigued by this program, I'd ask you to come some Thursday, or if you want to see me after, and we'll get you more information. I send out a newsletter every week to the volunteers and the caregivers. But come and see, we have a great time. We, the volunteers, and so do the My Timers. One of the staff at church said to me about a month ago, I love standing in the hallway when everyone leaves at 4 o'clock because everyone has a smile on their face. The caregivers tell me that they sometimes don't remember their names or what they had for breakfast, but almost every day they ask, when are we going to church? Meaning, when are they going to go for My Time? On Thursday, as I said, we have it on Thursday. On Thursday morning, I received a call from a caregiver who said, my husband's not going to be there today. And then she went on to say, he died this morning. The thing that's amazing, this lady is in grief. And she said, I want to tell you, and I want to tell the volunteers how much he appreciated this program and that I did. For her to take the time, as I said, in her grief, to remember to call. I asked them if they can't come to call, but I was so touched by that. And I hear from caregivers every week when they come to pick them up or they drop them off. I try to talk to them, and they say, my husband or wife just so appreciates this. So it's something that's needed. There are a few other programs in the community, but this is something that, again, if you know of someone or if you're intrigued by the program, I'd ask you to come and check us out. I'm president of the Dr. Martin Luther King Commemorative Scholarship Program. It's a program that has been going on for 20 years. It's in honor and memory of the work of Dr. King, and we reward scholarships to the deserving high school students from Lake, Marion, and Sumter counties. It was started by Dr. Lou and Barb Jones. I first became involved with it, or found out about it, when my wife and I first moved to the Villages. One day she saw an announcement in the paper, Kathy saw it, saying that there's going to be a Democratic breakfast, so there's a connection here. And so we went. It was at a restaurant. There weren't a lot of Democrats there because at that time, there were probably 200-300 members of the club, more than there are in here today. Now we're the largest club in the state, so we should congratulate ourselves. So anyway, we sat down with Lou and Barb at the table, or they asked us to sit down, and they told us that we were both educators, so they talked about the program, a scholarship program, invited us to attend. And we have a breakfast every year, a second Saturday in January. So we went, and then they asked us to be members of the committee. When Lou passed away about 5 years ago, after he passed away, his wife called and said, Lou wanted to be the president so I've been president ever since. This year at our breakfast on January 14th, we awarded 12 $4,000 scholarships. Now, if you watch when they start publicizing scholarships in May about students from the charter school and the surrounding schools, you'll see that hardly any of them are $4,000. So they're significant scholarships. So it's a struggle almost every year to raise the $50,000 as we did this year. But I can tell you that members of the Scholarship Selection Committee would tell you we probably could have given, because of the applications received, another 12. Lee and Judy Lefebvre are members of the club, and they're here with us. They're on the scholarship committee. And Lee and Judy, stand up. Where are you? I want to thank them for their work. They will acknowledge what I said, that we could use some, the money that we raised, if we raised more, we could have given additional scholarships. We receive a generous donation from the Democratic Club, and not the Republican help for some reason. And we receive a lot of donations from churches, but most of our donations come from individuals. And many of them are regular donators to the program. We have some of them in here and some that come to the breakfast. And I mentioned the breakfast. It's at the Savannah Center, and we had over 500 people there this year, which we do almost every year. During COVID, we did it virtually. We've maintained the program. But if you are inclined to want to support us, my wife is here, and she will be and I will be here after, and we'll take your name and address, so we'll get you the information. I can tell you the scholarships we try to go to students who are in need of the money. And this year again, we had a number of students who received the scholarship who are the first in their family who will be going to college. So it's significant with the cost of college that they receive these kinds of scholarships to get them on their way in a positive manner. So again, if you're so inclined to help us support that program, come up and see us after. We'll get your name and address, and we'll get you information about it, which usually goes out sometime in September. I do this because I have this sort of personal motto that to lead an honest life and to give back to society. That's what we as Democrats do, don't we? Yes. So I applaud you for continuing to be members of the club. We know that this coming year and the coming couple of years are going to be, we have our hands full. We need to really work to get Democrats reelected. I thank Diane for inviting me. I don't know, will you take any questions if they have any, or do we have time for that? Anyone have any questions? Hopefully I answered all of them. So I hope to see some of you after the meeting. Thank you.
All you have to do to be all alone in that room is to sit at the table asking for volunteers. But I am desperate for volunteers. Next Saturday, there's a Rotary charity event at Polo Field. 2 Republican clubs are going to be there, and I'd really like for us to have a presence too. I need more volunteers. If you can do it, 2 hours, I just need 2 hours on a beautiful Saturday at the polo fields. And the public comes from 11 to 6, and we're doing 2-hour shifts. So if you open the buzz on Monday morning, you will find a link that would allow you to volunteer for that. And I would just really like to be there as well as the Republicans. So, next, we have our keynote speaker, freelance writer John Dunn, who has been an educator in Florida. He has written more than 400 articles for various publications such as Florida Trend, Business Florida, Europe, Sierra, and the St. Petersburg Times. He has authored 16 nonfiction young adult books, some of which received national recognition, and edited a Civil War series for young readers. In February 2020, his book, Drying Up: The Freshwater Crisis in Florida, was selected as the winner of the Florida Historical Society's Stetson Kennedy Award for writing about Florida's natural environment. The book also has won the Bronze Medal for Florida Nonfiction in the 2019 Florida Book Awards. A father and grandfather, John lives with his wife in Ocala, Florida. Please welcome John.
So thank you, Diane. Thanks to everybody for having me here today. It's really a nice feast to my eyes to see so many Democrats concentrated in one place. But for some reason, I'm remembering when I first voted in 1972. My wife and I lived in Paulding County, Georgia, which is west of Atlanta. In those days, there was one stoplight in the whole county, total of 26,000 people. This area you could have filmed To Kill a Mockingbird in, and it's dangerously close to where Marjorie Taylor Greene lives today. So a little bit out of here. But there was one high school and there was one middle school. I taught at the middle school, and so I was 22 or so, and they had the voting machines there. And I voted, and a lot of the faculty voted, so the local people did. At the end of the school day, the kids had all left, and I heard somebody coming up the stairwell, and there was a tap at the door. And I said, "Come in." "Hi, Mrs. Waltrip." And it was a young teacher about my age. I said, "Hi, how can I help you?" And she said, "Mr. Dunn, the student said that you voted for McGovern. Is that right?" I wasn't quite sure what to say next, but obviously try to shoot for the truth because lying is so complicated. And I said, "Yes, I voted for McGovern." She paused and she said, "Well, thank the Lord, I thought I was the only one." So that was my introduction to Democratic politics. I've been with you ever since. Okay, so so I've been an educator, a writer my whole adult life, and my wife and I have been involved in lots of environmental battles in Georgia and in Florida. I'm a rare person. I'm a native Floridian, born to natives. Even rarer than that, I'm from Miami and a native to Miami. And I say that because Florida has the distinction, according to the New York Times, of having the most people born out of state. Over 65% of the people in Florida were not born here. In Miami-Dade, the majority of the people were not even born in the country. I'm saying that not to rail against immigration or something, but that includes our leaders, the people making the decisions about this state. Most people have no idea about Florida. And one of the purposes of this book, I think, is for people like you, that are, most of you I assume are new to Florida, and you're curious about what's going on, what's happened. And we have severe environmental problems. Susan and I have run environmental groups, and we've had some battles, and we've had a lot of successes too. So this book was written in a magazine style to take on a really serious issue. So for the first part, I'm going to quickly go over some of the problems, and I'll show you some of the solutions that creative people are coming up with. And then what goes next? So there we go. I first started writing about water issues back in 1997. This was the cover issue for the Rotarian magazine, and at that time 80 countries were starting to have water shortages. It hasn't gotten any, let me turn like this so I can see. Things haven't gotten much better. Today we have over 2 billion people who lack enough water. As you can see, some children in Africa and other places have to go and fetch the water with buckets every day. In June 2017, in the big metropolitan area called Bangalore in India, day zero showed up. That meant when this huge city like the size of Chicago was running out of water. The next year, other cities followed suit. And I won't go through all of them, but as you know, if you watch the news, the Colorado River is drying up. The aquifer in the middle part of the country is drying up. And even here in Florida, a wet state, a state famous for rain and being wet. Back in 2012, Cedar Key, you know where that is? It's a real quaint fishing village on the Gulf Coast, but I don't know, an hour and a half drive from here. The people woke up one morning and salt water came out of their tap, and they couldn't drink it. The city government had to get the utilities people to stop pumping water. Everybody had to start using bottled water for the next couple of months until they got the problem straightened out. So what had gone wrong? Over pumping, sea level rise, and a drought. This is a little bit old right here, but this map was made 5 years ago using information from the Department of Environmental Protection and 5 water management districts. As you can see, Central Florida and South Florida had already passed the tipping point a couple of years ago. So how can this be? Florida gets 55 trillion gallons of rain every year, and we really only use 1 trillion, but so much of it is wasted. There's also a lot of water, we think, scientists think, in the ground. So how could we be running out of water? Well, for one thing, there are too many straws in the ground. Too many people pumping our aquifer. Unlike other states, most Floridians drink water from the ground, which is the purest water. Just to give you some perspective, I was born in 1949. There were 2 million people in the state. Now we have 23 million. And we have another 15 million on the way. We waste a lot of our water. Of the fresh water supply that you and I get every day for our drinking water, statewide, 50% of the fresh water, drinking water, is used to water the lawns. Now, I hope it's not still the case, but the villages once made national news because you had people riding around golf courses stopping and lecturing people that they weren't watering their St. Augustine grass enough to make it green enough and tall enough, that they were being fined by their homeowner associations. That doesn't go on anymore, does it? I hope not. For a while that was a problem. But it's not just there, it's everywhere in the state. Nationwide, it's 40%. Susan and I live near Silver Springs, which is an icon in Florida. It was the first tourist spot in the state a century ago, and it was the first magnitude spring, and everybody just came around the world to enjoy it. It's not a first magnitude spring anymore. In fact, of the over 1,000 amazing springs in North Florida, close to 400 of them don't flow like they used to. Silver Springs has lost 30 to 40% of its pumping power. They don't make movies in Silver Springs anymore. No more Tarzan movies, no more commercials, any of that. There's too much algae. The fish population has dropped sometimes up to over 90%. And the water quality is no good. And the amount of water coming up out of the ground has been diminished because of human activity. Here, sometimes the results are very spectacular. This is White Springs, which is northeast of here, getting all the way to Jacksonville. And in 1914, people came from all over the world to luxuriate in the spring waters there. But by 2005, this is what it looked like. A nearby mining operation had just simply sucked up the groundwater. And that was we went there a couple of years ago and it still looks like that. Well, it's not just pumping. Florida's water infrastructure is really old. As we get more and more people and we get more and more sea level rise, we are relying on these ancient pipes. In some places, in St. Augustine and other areas, the freshwater infrastructure has pipes that 75 to 100 years old. You might be surprised if you're new to Florida to know that we do have periods of drought. A lot of the state's environmental laws were written in the 1970s when the droughts were really bad. And in the 90s, we had droughts as well. It might look like Eden here, but we do have tremendous pollution problems. For decades and decades, we've lost lots of wildlife because of a whole slew of pollution problems. In fact, Florida tops the list, according to the EPA, for having the most polluted lakes in the country. Over 1,700 impaired water body. So, why is that happening with the pollution problem? Well, first of all, you can suck up the water out of the ground and use it to drink and water your ground, but if you pollute the water, you can't use that to drink either. So that's another factor to consider why our fresh water is diminishing. Stormwater is water that's rain. When it rains and the rain hits the earth, it courses over a farmer's field or a road or your backyard, it collects contaminants and dog poop and who knows what else. In Florida, most of it is not treated. It goes into a retention pond, it stays there for a while, and eventually it's evacuated to an estuary or the bay or the ocean. Sometimes I ask my environmental friends how many Superfund sites do they think we have in Florida. To remind you, a Superfund site is one, it's a polluted area, it's so bad the federal government's supposed to clean it up. So they say, I don't know, it's Florida, this isn't Gary, Indiana, but 5 or 6. The answer is no, over 90. We have over 90 that are leaking away every day. Wastewater is water that comes from our toilets, or it comes from a slaughterhouse, or it comes from an industrial activity somewhere. We have over 4,000 wastewater treatment facilities, and they're not all the same standard. The best is called the tertiary level or the advanced level, but even there, pharmaceuticals usually are not taken out. Yes, there can be traces of Viagra in the water supply when it's been treated. And in some places, such as Miami-Dade and Broward, they still are pumping treated sewage out into the ocean. They're supposed to stop in 2025. When I was a boy, it wasn't treated at all, just raw sewage just went right out to the ocean. Septic tanks are a problem. They leak. In Florida, the only time septic tanks really are checked out and looked at, inspected, is when they're put in the ground. And they have a drain field and it's supposed to be safe to use, but the problems, we'll see in a few minutes, is that when fresh water and the drain field come in together, we lose our water supply. And the other problem is because of the manure in there, it's a source of nitrogen, which causes algae outbreaks and other problems. We're told that I've been to a lot of workshops to write this book, and very often a city manager or a mayor will show up and say, you know, we're trying to get the locals off of their septic tanks and hook them up to sewer lines. That'll take care of the problem if we could coordinate our efforts and use the best technology and all that. But the problem is our sewer lines in Florida are old too, and they back up and they contaminate. This is a little bit old. I called the Department of Environmental Protection just the other day to get an update, but they didn't get back to me. So what I'm about to tell you is accurate up to about 2020. At that time, there have been over, 23,000 sewage spills, and that's enough to fill 2,400 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And we have another problem called algae. The whole world has a problem. This is what it looks like from an airplane over Kings Bay, over Crystal River, which isn't too far from here. Some of you have probably been out there. So on a bad day, this is what it looks like. Underneath the water, this is what algae looks like. It overruns and kills off the aquatic life. When I was a boy, we heard about red tide. I grew up in Miami area, but when we heard about red tide, it was usually something that happened in the southwest part of the state, and it only happened a couple of weeks out of the year, and it was a natural occurrence. We were told, don't worry about it. Well, now it's around the whole peninsula. All year long, there are outbreaks of red tide, which the microorganism that causes it produces toxins, which kill birds and fish, and it's also dangerous to little children. Even though our governor won't admit it, Florida is ground zero in the climate change problem. Florida is the most vulnerable state for a variety of reasons. And it's not only the case that we're losing beaches. Sea level rise is also affecting our water supply. This is a mistake. It's supposed to say 2100, not 2021. So the sea level rise didn't go up to 6 feet last year. It's realized that was a mistake. It should say 2100. But it might be more, it might be less, but many scientists think it's going to be probably somewhere between 4 to 6 feet along the Florida coast and elsewhere by the end of the century. Now, most of us, when we think about sea level rise, it's easy to, in our imagination, to think of water slowly encroaching at Daytona Beach and eating away at the sand and destroying rich people's mansions. But, you know, in Florida, right underneath your feet right now is fresh water, if you go down deep enough. The layer under that is brackish water, and way below that is sea water, salt water. So the ocean water is coming in from the sides, but it's also pushing up. And as it pushes up, the groundwater keeps going up. And as it goes up, it's being contaminated by flooding. It's being contaminated because it gets into drain fields from septic tanks. And it's getting contaminated because the seawater is coming in from the sides. At the same time, because of the runaway development, we keep pumping the fresh water off the top, really releasing the pressure. So you have this upward pressure from sea level rise, and any fresh water that's on top as a weight is constantly being removed, which allows it to go faster and faster. Okay, that all sounds pretty gloomy and awful, and it is, but I talked to over 100 people for my book, and many scientists, and several of them said at this point, they said, okay, John, I just told you all those terrible things that's happening with Florida's water, but that's not the worst thing. Oh no, what could it be? They said, no, the worst thing, the most damaging thing is the destruction of the hydrology. That water cycle we all learned about in 4th grade. Remember, it rains, the rain sinks into the earth, it evaporates, and you have the cycle of the water life going over and over and over. But what's happening is if we keep destroying the natural world, we're destroying hydrologic functions. This is in Palm Beach, but it could be almost anywhere. It's called it used to be Brigger's Forest. So the bulldozers come in one day and knock down all the trees. And that's sad. The habitat's been destroyed, and aesthetically it's bad for us humans to see a forest ruined. But when you think about it, all those trees also contain water. They also were part of the hydrological system because the leaves would give off water vapor to the air. The roots would keep the soil in place. I'll pick on Miami since I'm from there. Here's an aerial view of a hydrologic mess down there. Just think what happens when it rains. The water goes over all that urban landscape, and then it drains into that canal, which is one of many, and the reason there's so many canals there because 100 years ago, Florida tried to get rid of too much water. That was the big problem. Now, do you see the canal? It's headed towards Biscayne Bay. It, like a lot of other canals down in South Florida, are running into trouble because of sea level rise. Where the water evacuates in the bay, it's harder and harder to get into the bay because the bay keeps rising. And so there's a problem with that water backing up. This is Jacksonville from the air. If you talk about a hydrologic mess, how in the world can you have a cycle of water when something looks like that. But it's not just there. Oops. Well, I want to back up 1 second. Okay. There's a slide missing, I think. This is Marco Island, the way it used to look. Do you know where that is? It's on the southwest coast. When I was a boy in the 50s and 60s, this is what it looked like. I camped there as a Boy Scout in the early 1960s, right on that sandy shore there. But in the middle 60s, this is what happened. Just almost within a year, developers came in and destroyed everything, put up figure development. So houses, every homeowner could have a little boat and pretend like it was a yacht and get out to the Gulf. And on the right is what Marco Island looks like today. This is what it looks like where you live today. It's beautiful out there, but you know what? 30 years ago, all this area was wetlands, farm area, water recharge areas, and it's been deformed and disfigured too. And it's not just the villages, it's all over the state. Florida gets over people leave the state, people come into the state, but there is a net gain of 1,000 people every single day. When you do the math, that's enough to fill up a city the size of Orlando, year after year. This is a study that came out, this study which came out in 2017, done by the University of Florida, 1,000 Friends of Florida and the state government. It's still, I think, the most definitive study about the population expectations for the future and available water supply. Florida's population is expected to increase 75% by 2070. I don't think they're all coming down here to be free. I think they're coming here because we don't have to stay in So that means another 15 million people are on the way. But the governor and the state legislature, as they have this pro-growth mentality all the time, they don't ever say where the water is going to come from, the fresh water that we need. I spoke to one of the authors of this study, and I said, did you all look at the number of tourists? And he said, no, we didn't, which I think is very interesting, because look at that figure. In 2019, 131 million tourists were in Florida. Last year it was about the same. They all come to the hotels, they have a good time taking long baths and swimming pools and playing golf and all that, but that's a lot of water for a lot of people. Where is it going to come from? Here's Florida from outer space. The dark parts haven't been developed yet, but don't you worry, as we talk right now, there are people around the state, probably right here. You know, I spoke to the Democratic Party about 10 years ago, so I'm used to, the third time I was here, I actually had a debate with one of the architects of the villages, but I can tell you about that afterwards. But I know what they're up to. They want to fill in those dark spaces with more concrete and more asphalt. And here's Miami again, unless they changed, but I don't think they had. Last time I looked, this project is still underway to build the largest retail and entertainment complex in North America in the Everglades, on the edge of the Everglades. It will even have snow. There'll be a glass dome so the shoppers can recreate in artificial snow. This in an area that will be inundated by the end of the century by the sea level rise. They're already having water shortages, and this is by a vote of 3-2 on the Miami-Dade Commission approved this project. It's going to be a win-win situation, I understand. If you do get involved in Florida's water issues, you need to know that a lot of the trauma and drama that takes place occurs in the 5 water management districts. We do not have a central water czar. I think there are people in this community who think that they ought to be, but it doesn't work that way. We do have 5 independent water management districts. And the people that decide who's going to get the water and what purpose happen to work in these places. And very often, if you listen to them talk, and people who are water engineers talk, and the politicians, they talk about the water pie. Very simply, it's just the division of our precious water and who's going to get how much. If you can see the graph, 35% of the fresh water supply goes to you and me, and people like us, for our basic needs. But the biggest taker of water in Florida is agriculture. It's 40%. If you look at the national pie, you might be surprised it's not agriculture, it's electric power. About 40% of water nationwide is used to make electricity or cool towers. Right now, it's about 10% in Florida. I think that's something to think about because we have a tendency to say, well, we got all these energy problems, environmental problems, let's just go electric and that'll solve everything. A lot of water is needed to produce electricity. Sometimes you hear people talk like me and they'll say, oh, you got water wars coming, it's gonna be really bad, it'll be like the oil wars or something. Well, in Florida, we've already had water wars. The first ones took place in the 1970s in the Tampa Bay area. There's a 3-state water battle that's been going on for decades. It's been to the Supreme Court a couple of times. Florida has not done well in the Supreme Court. The biggest water war of all in the state is the Everglades. The Everglades is a slow-moving river, and it's about a century ago, a lot of it was shunted to the west coast and to the Atlantic coast to sort of dry up South Florida so developers and farmers could have dried up land to use. Today, there's a big battle to restore the Everglades and arguments about how much water goes to nature, how much water goes to the Seminole tribe, how much goes to Miami, how much goes to the national park, how much water is going to be left over to get into Florida Bay, which is a huge estuary in South Florida. Another threat, a brand new one, took place in February 2021 when a hacker tried to poison the water supply. He didn't get away with it, but it's set off alarm bells across the country. Okay, so I'm going to start to, that's the bad news. I'm going to start to get over a little bit. I like to say sometimes I start off on a minor key, the key of the blues, and then I'm going to transition to a major key, a more optimistic tone. So what do we do? If you talk to water engineers, they talk in terms of the hard path, and the younger ones talk about the soft paths. So what is the hard path? The hard path is the way we've been doing things. Engineers are good at what they do. They build things. I imagine we have a lot of very smart engineers in here. They probably agree. When it comes to water, engineers will build canals, they'll build dams. A community over here needs a pipe, put pipes, got nasty water, want to get rid of it, have a pipe come and get rid of that water for you. But it takes a toll on nature, as you see from one of those slides. Another hard path advocacy point is to start tapping the rivers. St. John's River is already being tapped to satisfy some of the water needs in Orlando. When I make talks like this, very often people say, look, John, it's very simple. We have all this salt water in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Desal, the Israelis do it, that's all we got to do. Well, you know what? We have over 100 desal plants already in Florida. This is the one in Tampa. It used to be the biggest one in the United States until a few years ago. To write my book, I went and talked to the engineers and took the tour there. And contrary to what a lot of people think, it does not supply all the water for the people of Tampa. It supplies about 1/3. And it works. They take brackish water and put it through the desal process. But it's very energy intensive. There's a problem what to do with the brine that's left over, and it takes a toll on fish and small sea creatures as well. But it is a possibility. Now and then we do find really new water supplies. Here's a picture of a satellite, an interpretation of satellite imagery that shows that very well might be in this part of the country, beneath the sand on the ocean floor, a huge freshwater glacial deposit left over from the ice age that could be mined one day. But you know, you might be surprised, but off the coast of Florida, we have freshwater springs. They're in the Gulf, they're off the coast of around St. Augustine. And I've talked to people in the water management districts, and they say, yeah, we know there's more fresh water coming up, but how expensive would it be to run pipes out of the ocean and try to pump in fresh water? So it's out there, but whether you can create the technology and do it economically is another matter. Unless you were here in the 1990s, you might not know this, but there was a big water argument. An influential group of business people in Tampa came up with the bright idea that Jeb Bush and the state legislature should pass a law allowing them to pipe water from North Florida down to Orlando and South Florida. That's how they were going to expand their water supplies in those parts of the state. My wife and I just, out of curiosity, went to one of the protest meetings at Chiefland High School, and some of the commissioners over there in that area, Levy County, they actually were advising people to get their shotguns and protect their water. That's how hot tempers were. Well, they were wrong legally. Water is not a locally owned item. It's a state asset. So they shelved this idea, but it's always ready to make a comeback to start piping water around the state. Some people say, well, what about reservoirs? Tampa has a reservoir in a really aptly named place called Fort Lonesome. It's, let's see, it's east of Tampa, and it's really interesting to go there. You can't just waltz out there, you have to get through security. So I made arrangements to go out there, and the engineers took me on a tour around the perimeter there. It's so big, it takes 2 men on 2 lawnmowers 2 weeks to cut the grass there. They put up 10-foot wire fences to keep the gators out. The gators managed to scale them anyway. So it's probably a good idea because originally this was supposed to also be a recreational area. But it works and it supplies about 1/3 of Tampa's water supply, another third. But the problem with Florida is that because we're such a flat state, is to find cavities big enough to have reservoirs. And then there's also an evaporation problem that goes with reservoirs. So here's the new idea. This comes, Diane Foley comes from your home state. It's called the soft path. It's the new approach to water, because California, until these floods of last week, California's had a lot of water shortage problems. They've had to be real creative. So anyway, it's a new approach to water management. It's based on the idea of trying to undo a lot of the damage in the past, mimic nature, and try to use natural systems as much as possible. Nobody thinks you're going to do away with all hard engineering, but maybe a combination of the two can help herald in a new age. It's based on the assumption that all water, whether it's wastewater, stormwater, or fresh water, is still H2O. Don't forget, what do the astronauts sometimes drink in outer space? Recycled urine. So nature's recycling water all the time. You and I probably have water that once was in a dinosaur, or Moses, or who knows, because it's always been here, and when we pass away, we're 80% water, and the water is going to be recycled somehow, some way. So that's all interesting to talk about when you have a few beers, but also the water policy managers are thinking, maybe we really can incorporate those concepts in a philosophical, meaningful way into the water management. And sometimes people say, are you saying that we're going to be drinking recycled toilet water? And I'm saying, it's already being done. Yeah. In Singapore, they've been doing it for over a decade. It's called New Water. Now, the idea of taking toilet water, wastewater, and stormwater, first you got to treat. Don't think anybody's just going to hook it up to your toilet and put it in a bottle. So it gets treated first. And one way to do it, this is what Tampa keeps trying to do, is to take the treated wastewater, which right now they dump into the Tampa Bay. What a lot of people like to do in Tampa is to inject it down into the earth. And the idea is it will get cleansed way down there deep before it finally is forced up to the surface in years from now. But there is the other way, which is to try to treat it to make it potable or drinkable. There is a city, you know where Altamont Springs is, near Orlando? I've talked to them, this isn't secondhand, they have actually gone so far as to 5% of their water supply right now is water that's been manufactured and then directly put into a bottle. So we're already there. There were attempts to try to clean up our stormwater with innovative green infrastructure. I don't know, do you have tiered water rates here in the villages?
Yes.
You do? Okay, so it's usually not a popular idea, but it does help people conserve, that the more you use per unit, the more you have to pay instead of getting a discount. California was able to reduce a lot of its water consumption by using tiered water rates. But people don't like them usually, so you have a political problem. Increasingly, the people in the water industry are talking about digital water. They're managing the flow of water. They're managing the application of the water by using the latest technology. You don't always have to go digital. Our neighbor went to Japan and came back and showed us this toilet they use in Japan. It's kind of dark there on the screen, but can you see the wash basin above the toilet? So you do what you have to do on the toilet, then when you wash your hands, the gray water that's produced from washing your hands is used to flush the toilet instead of clean, fresh drinking water. And this idea is being introduced around Florida in some of the new subdivisions, but it does require for a dual plumbing system where you can take your washing machine water and recycle it and use it to water your grass or your trees or something. Several communities are already doing things like this. There are over 75 artificial wetland parks in Florida. As the state keeps destroying real wetlands, they come up with the idea of creating artificial ones. And it's pretty clever though. Orlando has the biggest and most successful, most famous one. Several decades ago, the water management people in Orlando realized they had a wastewater management problem. The wastewater being treated, and then it was still so polluted that the DEP said you can't release it to the St. Johns River. You're going to have to clean it up some more. You're going to have to, quote, polish it. What should we do? Get a brand new water management plant, a water treatment plant? No, let's try something new, they decided. So instead, they took an old farming field here, and they brought in people who knew what to do and planted certain kinds of trees, and certain kinds of plants that have certain kinds of microbes that eat away at any kind of residual pollutants that are still left over after it comes out of the water treatment plant. I would recommend you go here someday, not when it's hot, because that's pretty miserable. It's very interesting because when you go, you'll hear people, voices from around the world. All sorts of people come to see what they've accomplished here and how to emulate it in their home countries. In Ocala, where we're from, we have one now. It was set up a couple years ago. It takes treated stormwater and treated wastewater and lets it seep down into the soil after it's gone through this polishing procedure. Part of the soft approach to water is to undo the damage done. So this is a picture of the Tamiami Trail. That's a road that goes from Miami to Naples. When it was built in the 20s, it was a marvel, a transportation marvel to go through the Everglades and actually build a major road through a swamp like that. But the problem was the road served as a dam. It kept a lot of the fresh water from going southward. So now you can see that here and there, the engineers are elevating the Tamiami Trail, and that allows fresh water to flow southward to get down to the national park and to Florida Bay. Were any of you here in the 70s? Okay, 5 or 6 of you. Well, you might remember the Kissimmee River. The Kissimmee River is the way it looked on the left. See how that serpentine characteristic that it has? The Kissimmee River flows from the south part of Orlando and goes 80 miles or so to the northern rim of Lake Okeechobee. Well, the business and farming interests wanted to dry up the land in between there, so they convinced the legislators to authorize the Corps of Engineers to reshape that serpentine Kissimmee River. And you see the picture in the middle? It's just a straight line. They turned it into a canal, and it wasn't even called the Kissimmee River anymore. It was just called C something. I forget the name of it. It's just a canal. It was a disaster. For one thing, The good thing about having a twisty, turny, meandering river is that it helps to clean up the pollution in it. Well, you don't have that, then you have an express for polluted water, and it gets to Lake Okeechobee faster than ever. So almost as soon as it was built, Congress decided that was a mistake, let's do it all over. So they started spending money to tell the engineers to undo everything they had just done, and to take the canal and to copy the way it used to look. So they just finished about last year. It's one of the biggest restoration projects in the world, actually. And what's really exciting is that it functions better as a river, but the wildlife has come back in unexpected numbers. And you can take a lot of boat cruises and hear informative talks about what's been accomplished there. The Everglades is supposed to be getting fixed too. In 2000, a big project involving the federal government and the state government, which was funding on and off again, got underway. But the recent thinking is because of sea level rise, this project probably isn't going to work. They're going to have to revamp it. I want you to know, just to start in on a positive note here, our state government is ignoring sea level rise, but they're not in South Florida. On the local level, a lot of attention and a lot of action is taking place. Look at that. All those cities and communities and counties have banded together for the Regional Compact Climate Change Organization. They have their own climate scientists. They put out their own climate reports. They do their own climate investigations. And they don't just try to build seawalls and elevate roads and such. They also are trying to reduce their carbon. Miami Beach, all those cities, in their new mandates, they are trying to be carbon neutral within 20 to 30 years. I think it's very commendable. Okay, here's well, I need to come to a conclusion pretty soon here. One idea I think might be new for a lot of you is called virtual water and water footprint. This comes from England, actually, about 15 years ago, and it's making inroads here. All of you understand a carbon footprint, I think, don't you? Well, a water footprint is similar. It's the idea that we need to take into consideration the water that goes into producing something. There's three kinds of water: blue, green, and gray. Blue water is in a lake, green water is in a tree, it's stored there, and gray water is wastewater that comes from manufacturing, polluted. If I were to say to you, how much water is needed for a cup of coffee? You'd say, 1 cup of water. It's silly. No, actually, according to the water economists, it takes about 37 gallons of water to produce 1 cup of coffee. When you talk about the agricultural needs and transportation, packaging, and a whole host of other activities, it's a whole new field. It takes 2 pounds of sugar to produce it requires 475 gallons of water to produce 2 pounds of sugar cane in Florida. It can cost up to 3,190 gallons to make 1 smartphone in production of water. This is our grandson 3 years ago. He was a winning model for this point. And his parents had to make a decision: what kind of diaper should we get, cloth or disposable? It's actually cheaper in the long run, and better for the environment, to use the cloth diapers, even if you have to wash them. You're washing them along with other clothes. So in the end, the water footprint of the 1 disposable diaper is 144 gallons. The water footprint of a cloth diaper is 4 gallons. This is such a big deal that a lot of countries are starting to use this in their decisions about import and export. Have you heard people complain about putting fresh water in plastic bottles? Yes, of course you have. And they say, oh, Florida's water is being put in plastic bottles and sent to Nebraska, and that's really bad. But what happens when we send our oranges to Nebraska? What's inside the orange? Florida water. It's being exported too. So it's a new way of evaluating the amount of water that's coming into your area and the amount of water that's going out. PBS had a special on this 6 months ago, so you might have seen it. When you give talks like this, environmental justice is a real trendy topic to bring up, and I won't go into very much at all. And there's usually a racial dimension to it, but in this case, it's something a little bit different and unique for Florida. In this case, the people in Taylor County have a river, and it's called the Finn Holloway River, and they were so poor that they were willing to have a sacrificial river. That meant that the river was designated as anybody can pollute it all they want without any consequences. And the really sad thing is the people of Taylor County went to Tallahassee and asked them to pass the law to declare this river an industrial river, a throwaway sacrificial river. Well, they regret it now, and they've been spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to rehabilitate it, and lots of people have been sick and all sorts of other bad things. But it's an ethical problem, and the ethics of water and our other environmental issues should be on all of our minds. I think probably a lot of you in here have grandchildren, and you and I probably aren't going to run out of water, but what kind of water resources will our children and grandchildren have if we don't start worrying about such things? Oh, and one place in Florida that is putting all this together is a brand new water college down in Florida Gulf Coast. Instead of doing just the hard path or a businessman's approach to water, the students are graduating with degrees where they consider the social sciences, the ethics, the engineering, and the business, and a very comprehensive view of how to deal with water in the future. Now you have a petition, I understand, on your chair. That's part two of what I was going to say really briefly. In Orange County, last year, listen, 80 Republicans and Democrats at the local level agreed. 89% of them, because they had a charter government, agreed to designate rights of nature, that's a growing popular idea around the world, to their water bodies, to protect their rivers and water sources. They wanted it put into the county government language that if a developer was going to do some kind of damage to a river, you could sue them. And it passed. I can't remember anything else in Florida passing with 89% of the voters. Well, then our governor, who boasts that he's from the free state of Florida, in the legislature, quickly passed a law saying that Orange County couldn't do that, and no other county in Florida can do it either. So, to push back, now the advocates of this want to put the issue on the state ballot, to change the state constitution to make it constitutional to do what Orange County wanted to do. So I would urge you to, if that's what the petition that you have there is, it would be a very good move, I think. And this is alarming. This is the last thing I wanted to leave you with, or next to the last thing. This is alarming, I think. In 2020, water for the first time ever was a commodity on Wall Street. It became something to sell as a stock. And a lot of people are concerned that what is essential for a basic human right is now just another commodity in America, another thing for sale. And when the big players come and start buying up the water resources, are we going to be dependent on them? I'm going to skip this part here. We have some handouts about some of the solutions, but basically the things I've been telling you, I think you can tell we seem to have a positive twist to them. But it's not enough. The big thing, as always, is to pick politicians that will do something to help. Florida hasn't always been the way it is now. We've had really illustrious governors in the past. Bob Graham and Lawton Childs, remember those? Back in the 70s. And Charlie Crist was really good environmentally too. He was. And he paid the price for it. The Republicans kicked him out of the party because he was concerned about a lot of the issues I've been talking about. So we used to be a leader in environmental issues in the United States. Not this kind of brat on the loose that seems to be the case right now. So I would urge you to take an interest in this. If you have any water denial relatives that you want to enlighten, there's some books over here I'd be glad to share with you. And I guess I'm a few minutes, 5 minutes over time, so I don't know what I want to do. But thanks for listening very much.
Any questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
That slide has all the water is safe water.
Yes.
Does our toilet water go into the same reservoir or tank as our drinking water and come back up right now in the village?
Well, I guess I meant, the advocates meant in the long run, over the centuries, over the eons of time, water is, the water we are drinking now was here a million years ago. And so I'm not quite sure what your utilities are on the village. Somebody else can probably tell, I just don't know. But I do know at the top of the world, they are facing water shortages there, starting just a couple months ago. All new construction for homes like a lot of you live in have to be built to a new water code to conserve water. So I don't know if they've started doing that here or not.
Ma'am, I see you in the back.
It's my understanding that bottom water companies are domestic have been taking water from our aquifer just south of here, and they don't even pay for it. Is that still going on?
That's one of the crazy things about Florida is that you can extract water. If you have a water permit, you can extract the water on your property and sort of pump away unless there's a crisis, and not pay anything much for it. When you and I get a water bill from the villages of the city of Ocala, you're not really paying for the water. We don't pay for it either. We're paying for the delivery of the water, the treatment of the water. Out in the county where people have pumps and they pump all the water they want, and they don't pay anything for it. So one of the things that needs to be done is everybody pays for water. It should all be metered, and it's not. And we don't put a real market value on water. But like I said, even you and I are not tricky. We're paying for the real cost of water. We're paying for the delivery of it. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Can these slides be made available on the website? Or that Buzz?
Well, I guess I could make it available. Which one were you interested in?
All of them.
All of them? Okay, oh, you said all of them. That's an idea, I hadn't thought about this. But yeah, I'll work on that. I'll post some of those, okay?
We'll put a link in the bus.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. If we create a link. Thank you, that's a good suggestion. Thank you very much.
Is there any movement in the villages if you don't want lawns, because right now we have to have lawns in some sections? Is there any way for us to work to not have lawns?
Well, I'm not sure how it works here. Are you in a homeowners association?
Yes.
You have to be, right? I would think that's something you have to take up internally. It's I think it's their policy, isn't it? I brought that topic up because, it used to make the headlines around here that there's like a little enforcement team of people that would go around and chastise people who hadn't cut their grass, who hadn't let their grass get high enough or it wasn't green enough. They had to water whether they wanted to or not, or they got fined by the homeowners association. And so the environmentalists, that's crazy, you're forcing people to waste water. And St. Augustine is not a good grass to use in Florida. It's very dependent on the water. There are other possibilities. So I guess you take it up with the homeowners association, so I guess.
What is a good grass?
Hello?
What is a good grass?
Zoysia is a popular new grass. It does brown up, but it's been increasingly used, and it's very drought resistant. Bahia grass, which is what they use in horse farms a lot, would be another possibility. And more people are using Florida native plants and just not using as much grass as they once did. They're turning their lawns. The whole idea, I don't know, have you ever wondered why do we think that we need to have a meadow or a field in our yard? A lot of people don't even have yards anymore they're just putting plants all over the place and ground cover and things like that. And there's a Florida plants, what's it called? The Florida Native Plants Society you can find online. And you can get in touch with them and they can give you design tips on how to convert your yard into a more eco-friendly place. There's a danger though, we have a friend that did that, and then her home insurance company dropped her coverage. Her name's Karen, and she asked the agent, "Why did you drop my coverage?" He said, "Well, we came by was obviously you letting your property go to hell in a handbasket, so we're not going to cover you." She said, "I'm just trying to protect the apartment. I have to have a grassy yard in order to get home insurance." Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Grassroots organization, 250 teams around the state of Wisconsin, just neighbors like you, talking to neighbors. My in-laws live in this area. They have for 25 years, and they don't know many Democrats. And I told her, because I'm down here for the month, I'm finding them. And I was so excited to walk in here and see all of you. So all I want to do is give you a shout out that Florida is not lost. Nikki Fried is an amazing woman who is going to take you to great places. It's people like you, the people in this room that are going to walk out there and say, there is another perspective to this, and let me share that with you. And so I just wanted to give you a great shout out because you gave me a lot of hope today. I'm still in the movement, raising money for $500,000 for Florida last year, and I'll continue to do that because it's people like you that are going to turn this country back, and we got to get rid of that disease.